Hey, this is Bill, and back in 1991, I was 8 years old, and I first got to see probably the greatest cartoon hero of all time, and that was Mr. Darkwing Duck. And on behalf of all the fans, just wanted to say thank you to Tad Stones and all of the creators, the writers, animators, the storyboard artists, the voiceover artists, of course, and Mr. Jim Cummings for bringing DW to life. Thank you for making our beloved Darkwing Duck.
Hi, I'm Mike Russo. I'm the co-host of the St. Canard Files, the Darkwing Duck Podcast. I want to thank everybody who's brought Darkwing Duck to life these past 30 years. Everybody from Tad Stones to the writers, the voice actors, and all the people who's keeping his spirit alive today. Darkwing Duck means the world to me. It's my favorite show of all time. I enjoy it in the good times. It's got me through bad times as well. My daughter, she's 5 years old. She loves it. She enjoys watching it with me. She can sing the theme song. She loves the characters. And I hope the show continues to inspire future generations of kids the way it's inspired me when I was a kid and my daughter now. Again, it means everything to me. I love it. Thank you so much for giving the world Darkwing Duck. And here's to many, many more years of his adventures. Everybody, let's get dangerous.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Darkwing Duck virtual panel. This is the 29th anniversary of Darkwing Duck, and we brought this together for you for the 30th anniversary of the Disney Afternoon. I'm your host, Will Santana. We hope you guys enjoyed this panel. That we put this panel together due to the COVID-19. Also, with no conventions going on, we had a lot of the cast members going out there, from Tad Stones, Terry McGovern, Susan Silo, especially, Jim Cummings and Katie Leigh, and so forth, James Silvani. We were going to have all kind of Darkwing Duck cast members from the comic books and stuff who were going to go to conventions for you guys to see, get autographs, get photos of, and attend their panels. Well, unfortunately, you guys weren't able to see these things, so we thought, hey, let's make a virtual one for you guys to see and participate as well. So we hope you guys enjoy some of the fan-made videos as well, along with the cast members. Guys, remember, this is not an interview. I'll plug myself at the end of the video. So let's go ahead and get on with this, and let's get on. Let's start off with number one top dog creator, Tad Stones.
My name's Tad Stones. I'm known as the creator of Darkwing Duck, although it took about 80 people to put the whole thing together. But I was approached by Jeffrey Katzenberg before Quibi, before DreamWorks, back when he was at Disney as part of the new management. And he wanted me to create a show called 00 Duck. There had been a DuckTales episode featuring Launchpad, but he just liked the name. He said, no, it's got to be a brand new character with the name 00 Duck. So I went ahead and created a James Bond parody. I was not particularly excited about it. And Jeffrey wasn't either. And now I realize how lucky I was in that instead of saying, okay, I'm going to get somebody else, he asked me to do it over. And brainstorming with some of the other writers there, specifically Dwayne Capizzi, look up his credits. He's done Jackie Chan Adventures and Alf and worked on several of my shows. But Dwayne looked at the early sketches, which was this duck in a tuxedo with a mask. I forget why we gave him a mask, but whatever. He said, boy, with the mask and a little hat and a cape and a tuxedo, he looks more like a Green Hornet or one of the old pulp characters. And that lit me up because I love that old stuff. I didn't know it from growing up, but I knew it as a comic fan bleeding into old radio show fans and things like that. That got me away from the James Bond stuff. And we went through all sorts of, teams that Launchpad was part of it for a while, a little guy in a tuxedo. But it's kind of like Doc Savage had a team of eccentric experts, a chemist, an engineer, a communications guy. And I thought that's what Darkwing could have, this team that isn't a James Bond type team, something fresh and new. But it didn't really come together till we came up with the idea of Gosalyn. She was the heart that his relationship with the little girl raising her is what gave heart to the show. We quickly realized we had way too many characters, and it got down to the essence of a show about a father and a daughter in a launch pad. And we realized that at a certain point, it was like, what if Batman had a daughter who refused to stay at home? So Goslin was supposed to be just as comedic as Darkwing was, and an obstacle to his ego and getting things done. But we never questioned the bond that they had. Anyway, we went out there, sold Double O Duck, and the James Bond people said, you can't use that name. We own that name. We had a contest. Interestingly, Alan Burnett, who went on to leave Disney, go to Warner Brothers and do the Adventures of Batman with Bruce Timm, those guys. We had a contest for the name. Alan won it with the name Darkwing. I loved it. None of the other names came close. And I just added Duck to it. I said, Darkwing, it sounds cool, which is what he thinks he is, but Duck is the silliness that's part of the show. Once freed of the 00 name, I was freed of all the spy stuff, although we still had a spy organization, which, although he didn't state it specifically, probably funded his adventures. And I indulged myself in my love of Silver Age comics, which I grew up with. And that, man, if if you're born after the Silver Age, you have no clue how goofy comics were. Batman fighting aliens in rainbow suits, and giant Jimmy Olsen turning into a turtle boy, people with super evolved heads, and a lot of that you see in Darkwing Duck. No continuity to speak of. That was part of the charm. We wanted to do like an old Warner Brothers short, 22 minutes long, with heart, with Disney heart. And that was kind of our tone and our formula for Darkwing. And I gotta say, my two favorite projects of my entire career were Darkwing Duck and the Hellboy animated movies that we did, for entirely different reasons, but both tapped into different sides of my creativity. Darkwing they both had really short schedules, but now, since I've retired, I've gone to comic conventions and I've gotten in touch with the fans, because I never got that reaction before. And man, the characters really meant a lot to them. A lot of people with rough childhoods found solace in Darkwing Duck and that relationship between Darkwing and Goslin. It really meant a lot to them. So hearing that reaction now, almost as of next year, 30 years later, means the world to me, and always loved the character in the show. And it was so great to be able to do 91 episodes when it was originally only supposed to be 65. So it was a good time.
All right. Well, Tad, on our Facebook page, Instagram, and Twitter, you had over 70 questions. Now, we don't have time for you to answer 70 questions, unfortunately. So my co-host picked 2 questions he thought were good. Here we go. Both of them actually come from Instagram. The first one is from Christian Life Animation. And he said, what was your favorite character, your favorite episode you worked with, and how did Darkwing Duck change your world?
Okay. Pick another question. No, my favorite character actually was Goslin. She was just... my daughter was 3 at the time, and it was kind of like, what would she, and she was very independent, and what would she turn out to be? Oh, sorry. What would my daughter turn out to be like? And I postulated that it was this wild character. Strangely, she didn't come out that way, but my 6-year-old granddaughter is exactly that way. So Goslin skipped a generation or something. Anyway, she was my favorite character. Favorite episodes, I really don't have one. I always like the real pilot, which is not Darkly Dawns the Duck, meaning the pilot in a normal sense of this is the first script that was written to show people how we mean to have fun with the cartoon physics of the show. Because DuckTales before us had been pretty straight comedy adventure where we were going to do, falling anvil type stuff, as in people surviving it. So that was that sinking feeling, which never made it onto DVD. I think it's on Disney Plus. I think it made it that far.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a one-off, but if you look at that one, you really see the relationships between the various characters and how we meant to play it in the show. And what he's meant to me is basically, like I said, it was one of my favorite creations. Great time. I had a great staff, creative staff, and we were all having fun with it. I wish more of our episodes were animated by Disney Australia, because they really understood the humor. They had huge, talented guys. And I was really jealous of later shows like Goof Troop and Bonkers, because Australia had expanded their staff by that time. They had something like, I think, 22 episodes each, where we had 8, I think. But I don't know, our best episodes, you laughed out loud. I mean, I like the ones where we played with the format. Comic Book Classics is one where, as different characters are writing the script of a comic book, somehow Darkwing is playing out that adventure. There's no way to tell, to make that a normal story, but I just loved playing with it that way. And all the, the rogues gallery, the villains and all of that just made it a great show, great fun thing to work on.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that sinking feeling was the pilot episode, because that's like one of the biggest debates within the Darkwing community. But the second question is also from Instagram. It's from Snooze Rat. And he says, or she says, if I'm not mistaken, there was a Planned Justice Duck series that was canceled. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
There was not.
Oh, there wasn't.
Short answer, no. A lot of people always say, are there any stories that you pitched? And yeah, we pitched every time. To get 3 premises, we had to pitch at least 5, that's just how the way things worked. Sometimes executives don't think they're doing their job unless they at least throw one out. But there was always half ideas. I mean, I think I pitched ABC an episode where we would find, just like after the original creation of Negaduck where we split Darkwing into a good and bad side, I just liked the character so much, I told the guys to bring him back. And I said, don't explain how. We don't want to do the same story. He's just a great character. Let's use him. And I pitched basically somewhere out there, Posiduck exists as a separate entity. I could not tell you for the life of me what story I thought I was going to tell. ABC didn't like whatever I pitched. It was just like, one of a dozen pitches that, we say, we think we can do a story of this. And someone says, we don't think you can. So there's like that, Justice Ducks. I don't think I never pitched something like that. I mean, a lot of times things seem logical and you say, well, of course that was done as a pilot or something. And it's like, no, again, my love of the Silver Age, you have to do hero team ups and there's got to be the League of Villains, so it was, it was really no deeper than that. And I don't think of our executives at the time, it just wouldn't be as promotable. And that Darkling was a big success, but it wasn't like a SpongeBob, or way back in time, the Smurfs, where everything was Smurfs all over the world and little toy figures were everywhere. So it wasn't a different mentality. They weren't trying to do more and more episodes as long as it's popular. They just said, no, 65 is the minimum number we need to syndicate this forever. The only reason why we got to do, more is because ABC asked for 2 seasons worth. That was separate from the syndication package. So anyway, that was not a for real thing. And
right.
as far as I know, the only other person who said, oh no, I brought it up at a meeting might be Greg Wiseman. He might know. One of the lucky things that happened to our Darkwing is that there was always like a mid-level executive, and that's even a strong term, basically a management person, to be someone who knew about your show, knew how it was pitched, and could be like an objective voice of saying, I think you need to do this or that. And luckily for us, Greg was ours, and he had been an editor at DC Comics. So when we brought up any sort of Silver Age trope, he knew exactly what we were talking about and could add to it. And his notes were very creative. I said this before, I'm sure the boss didn't know it at the time, but Greg once said to me, he said, "Look, it's my job to give you notes. It's your show. You don't have to take them." And I know the boss would not want those words to escape his mouth. No way that he would okay an executive gives notes and it's not followed. But I will say Greg is, one, gave very good notes, but two, is very passionate, and he will wear you down if he really believes something should be a certain way. It was often easier to go with whatever he said, but we're very lucky in that way. But ideas are thrown away or thrown out there all the time, from show ideas to story ideas, character ideas, and people always want to, what's the gold that didn't get mined? But man, you just have to come up with that. That's how you do it. Just idea after idea, you shoot them out there, and you don't retain them. If you develop something into a show, yeah, you probably hang on to that because there was some idea in there that you wanted to bring forward. Again, the head of the Rescue Rangers before Chip and Dale was a character called Kit Colby, who wear that flight jacket. Well, Chip ended up wearing the jacket, and the name Kit ended up on a bear in Tailspin. So it was like Jim took one thing, I took the other, and you hang on to the old ideas. But as far as an entire series pitch, I would say Disney felt, oh, we've got our superhero show. We want our next thing to be something different.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Philip Giffen, and I always like to state the date. It's May 5th, 2020. Happy Cinco de Mayo Day. And we, in case you watch this in the future, anyone, we have been in quarantine now for, 6 weeks or more, but I'm pretty proud of the way our country's handling this for the most part. Anyway, I am the composer for the Disney animated cartoon series called Darkwing Duck. And when I say I'm the composer, that means I wrote the underscore. And I didn't write the theme song that starts each show. So remembering back, which was quite a while ago, almost 30 years, the first thing that comes to mind, and the first person it's essential that I recognize, is my dear longtime friend, Richard Gibbs, an incredible composer, who I met at college, Berklee College of Music. And when Rich moved from Boston to Los Angeles, he got a gig. He got many gigs, one of which was the keyboard player for the band Oingo Boingo. Like I said, he's incredibly talented. But anyway, he got a gig scoring a movie, and he called me in a bit of a panic and said, "Phil, I know that this is something you know how to do, and I've never done it. Help!" Anyway, it was my honor to help him. And when I say help him, he doesn't need any help creatively. He's a genius. But I orchestrated and kind of produced Rich for many years. I don't know, maybe 15 years. And I can't even count the number of movies we did. We, meaning the collective we, it was really Rich did that I orchestrated. Including the first season of The Simpsons, which was just a ball. Anyway, Disney first approached Richard Gibbs so I was not the first choice, but I don't mind. They approached Richard Gibbs to see if he would do the underscore for Darkwing Duck. And Rich had so much happening. And to score a cartoon, it's incredibly demanding and time consuming. It's unbelievably labor intensive. So Rich said, look, I can't do it, but I know who can. And Rich recommended me. And then, I met with Disney and Tad Stone, and I got the job. And so I have Richard Gibbs to thank for that job. And there were 93 episodes, and Disney gave me a full orchestra every week, which was, they don't do that anymore. Now you're expected, at that level, they don't do it anymore. A lot of that is because samples nowadays are so good, you can mock up an orchestra and it sounds so realistic that they don't really want to spend the money for the real thing. And another thing I want to make very clear is there were 23 minutes a week of music to write, which I cannot begin to write 23 minutes of cartoon music in 1 week. Now I could write, and I have written 23 minutes of music for other movies I've scored. By the way, I'm an Emmy-nominated composer. I won an Emmy nomination for an NBC show called Boomtown. But I've written a lot of episodic television as well as feature films and that kind of thing. I kind of began as an orchestrator for great composers like the great, late Michael Kamen. I had the great honor of working for him on Die Hard 1, Die Hard 2, Lethal Weapon 1, Lethal Weapon 2, some of those big blockbuster movies. Anyway, so what I did for Darkwing Duck, Disney allowed me to basically hire kind of a staff of co-writers. They were their official title. They were orchestrators, but I gave them. What I would do is I wrote the theme for each character. Darkwing, Gosalyn, all of the characters had their own theme that I composed. And then each week there was a new bad guy, and I would write the bad guy theme. And then for my orchestrators, I was very organized, and I would say, okay, and I numbered each theme, and I said, use this theme number 7 between this time and this time, transition to this theme between here and here, and so on. And I kind of almost gave each orchestrator an assignment, which, by the way, in this town, if you're an active working orchestrator, that also means you're a highly skilled composer and arranger too, which I had the good fortune of hiring those guys. And I gave them half writer's credit for everything they wrote. So they're still collecting royalties. My phone should be ringing with them thanking me. I don't seem to hear anything. Anyway, so I'm so sorry. It's been so many years. I can remember some of my co-writers, but not all of them. And I feel, I would feel terrible listing some people's names and not everyone, but you know who you are because you're still making money from it. I mean, by the way, those royalties fluctuate. Sometimes they're high, sometimes they're low, depending on where Darkwing is airing in the world. And it's currently being streamed again on the new Disney streaming platform. Anyway, those guys were incredible. They did not only orchestrating, but plenty of arranging and composing. Even though they were my themes, you have to be a highly skilled composer / arranger / orchestrator to do what I was asking them to do. And they each and every one of them knocked it out of the park. So they were great. And it was pretty amazing that Disney gave me an orchestra every week. The size of the orchestra was, I think, usually around maybe a 20-piece orchestra. It wasn't huge, but it pushed enough air, and I would conduct. And it's very challenging to write cartoon music in the style of Carl Stalling, which that's what we were doing, because that just seemed, it had a kind of a classic quality to it. When you write in that style, it doesn't get old because it's already old, which that's, in my opinion, that's why so many film scores are orchestral, because that doesn't really age because it's already old. As opposed to like your hip hop type score or a jazz score, which can be really, really cool and effective, but in time, it's like, wow, that sure sounds dated. Whereas an orchestral score, I think, ages way better. But as far as the studio where we recorded, we recorded in various orchestral rooms in Los Angeles, and that's where I reside. Tad Stone was just incredible, and we'd spot every week and just, talk about this goes here, this goes here, let's do this here, let's do that there, that kind of thing. Had a great music editor. And anyway, it's been an incredible experience that I, to this day, am incredibly grateful for. This house, the studio behind me, I owe in part to Darkwing Duck. And I continue to thank Richard Gibbs, who recommended me for the job. Anyway, it's been a wonderful 29 years, and I'm really lucky that I've been relatively busy for quite some time here in LA.
All right, Phil. Well, we have two questions before we let you go from the fans, and they're both from Tim Partridge in the UK. His first question is, in the episode Twin Beaks, you very closely imitated Angelo Badalamenti,
yes.
Badalamenti themes from the Twin Beaks TV show that it is parodying. You accurately sent up the main theme and also briefly Laura Palmer's theme. What was the process for approximating Badalamenti's iconic music in such detail?
Well, what are you saying? I stole somebody else's music? What's this guy's name? Well, let me tell you something. The title of the show was Twin Beaks, and at the time there was a very popular show called Twin Peaks. Mm-hmm. And so, by the way, Angelo Badalamenti, incredible composer, and I love his work. And so I happen to be, I guess, a bit of an expert in knowing the copyright laws. And I say that because I was once an expert witness, and maybe I shouldn't say this. Well, it was a pretty high profile case where I was an expert witness in a copyright infringement. And that's what the accusation was. So they had a jury and everything. And so I know a fair amount about that. So because I know what the parameters are, I was very careful to listen to Angelo Badalamenti's theme. And I took the essence of that theme, but I didn't copy it note for note. Otherwise, that would be a copyright infringement. But I certainly paid homage to his score for Twin Peaks. And it just helped to make Twin Beaks a little funnier. So there you go. Please don't take me away in handcuffs. Oh.
All right, Phil. All right, we got the second question. Is the Darkwing score has a very cinematic sound with sophisticated use of brass and woodwind. How did you achieve this sound? How big was your orchestra, and where was it recorded?
Well, We discussed it a second ago. My orchestra was, I think, about 20 pieces. Sometimes it would be a little more, depending on what the needs were for that particular show. And as far as it being cinematic, you're absolutely correct. That's kind of my training as a film composer, which again, I should also thank, again, Berklee College of Music in Boston, where I got my training, and it was invaluable. So yeah, we definitely took a cinematic approach. And by the way, we scored Darkwing Duck pretty much in the style of Carl Stalling, who is kind of the godfather of cartoon music. And we did that intentionally. A lot of cartoons now don't go that route, which that's cool too. But we just liked the pairing of the Carl Stalling approach with Darkwing Duck. So I hope that answers that question. Any more?
That was it. Thanks for your time, Philip. The music composer, guys, of Darkwing Duck, Philip Giffen.
Oh, thanks so much for your interest. Please keep watching.
Hello, my name is Jim Peterson. I'm 1/3 of the trio, which is a name we were sort of known by. The other two members are Rob Humphrey and John Benke. Rob and I knew each other. We grew up in the town of Rock Island. We were really good friends with Bill Motz, who later became another Darkwing Duck writer. And Rob and I went to film school at Southern Illinois University, where we met John, and we all love to do make comedy movies. We started to make some silent black and white in the movies in the style of Harold Lloyd, Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, and several of them actually won some fairly big awards. And we ended up moving out to Los Angeles, and a Disney executive saw one of our films and recommended us to Tad Stones, who was just starting up Darkwing at the time. Actually, it was 00 Duck when we first met with Tad. And actually, John, my partner John, had the first meeting with Tad alone, and Tad pitched him the 00 Duck premise and said, and then John came back we were all living in an apartment with like no furniture whatsoever, just mostly all sleeping on futons on the floor. I think we had like, a couple card table chairs at the time. And John came back from the meeting and said, how would you like to write cartoons? And I was like, thrilled beyond belief because, it's a huge Warner Brothers fan growing up. And so, we pitched like 3 ideas, and Tad bought 2 of them. The first 2 premises that we pitched were Dirty Money and Beauty and the Beat. So we were right there at pretty much at the beginning of the series, and it really was just like a dream come true, really, because it was a great first show to work on. We ended up working on probably about 20 different series before I left California in 2002. But anyway, but by far Darkwing is my favorite. So we ended up writing 7 episodes in total, and probably worked on parts of another 2. So probably like 9 of the episodes before. Well, actually, we did a little bit of bouncing back and forth between Bonkers and Darkwing for a while. So like the last episode that we worked on, Hot Spells, which was based off of one of our earlier scripts. There's a line in Ghoul of My Dreams that John wrote, and we thought would never get left in the show, where Morgana says, "Finally, with the whole city of St. Canard asleep, I can steal enough money to repay my student loans." Tad said, he wanted us to do a story on, what school she owed that much money to. So, and I think, now we all owe that much money to whatever schools we have gone to. But then, so we kind of invented a school for her to go to, and and of course, I don't think we initially. I mean, the devil was character Beelzebub was imported over from Dead Duck, which we didn't have anything to do with. So, but I can't remember whose idea it was to include him. But that's the part of it that probably got us into a little, got the episode into some hot water. So, but no, it's been, in terms of all the shows that we ended up working on, I still have a ton of Darkwing memorabilia. I have the storyboard saved from, I have everything saved from Beauty and the Beast. I have our premise, outline, script, and a storyboard, which is like 300 pages long, and it's just great. I've actually gone out and spoke at Cub Scout meetings or in schools and stuff like that, and presented, and people are I think, and then showed the full episode, and people are always think it's pretty cool, especially learning how much work goes in to making a show, even kind of think that it's all just magically appears, but it's 3 to 5 months of writing, going back and forth between getting executive notes and back and forth with Tad and stuff. My one example with Beauty and the Beast is of a process going back and forth. Like in the original version, Bushroot was going to be a farmer, and he was doing genetic plant experiments, and then Tad was like, yeah, let's make him a scientist, and it's like, okay, and he came up with the name Bushroot, and I was like, yeah, but it was Philip Bushroot at that time, and we had to come up with the idea that that Bushroot was going to become part plant, so he was doing the hybrid experiments on himself. And I was like, oh, I got this one. If we call him Reggie or Reginald or Reggie, then we can use a joke. The other Tad wanted to throw in the other scientists, Dr. Gary and Dr. Larson. Those were Tad's idea. And I say, if his name's Reginald, then we can do Reggie's a Veggie, Reggie's a Veggie. So that's and I guess he's my favorite character because I spent a lot of time. We all would take sections, but I had the section where he transformed. Learned that he had powers, and so that was the section I worked on. And I think initially the speech was really long. It was over a full page where he kind of goes through the steps, and that got cut down wisely because it would have been a lot of him talking to himself on the screen. But I don't know. I kind of feel that I got to shape his character quite a bit, which was it's always really cool.
So Jim, what has Darkwing meant to you in the last 29 years?
I think that's always where it'll come up now I'm live in such a different world, and I'll but if my past comes up, I'll say that's the first thing that I say. Oh, I wrote for Darkwing, and most people know it, and so it's it's really cool. It's oh, I love that show, so that's always been a thrill, and I just love seeing that it's continued. A lot of our other shows that we worked on, kind of disappeared into oblivion and stuff. So it's great to see it live because it's definitely my favorite.
Now, Jim, we had 2 questions on social media for you that we pulled out. The first question is from Stan Lunn. He asked, did you take any inspiration from Freddy Krueger when you created Nod Off?
Oh, I don't think, not particularly. I think I sort of explain this in your podcast, but where we were, for the first 4 scripts that we worked on, we were freelance. So we were also doing jobs at other companies. And one of the other companies, we were doing working on a development for a show called Little Nemo in Slumberland. So more than Freddy Krueger, there's a character in Little Nemo called Imp and Flip characters, and I think Madhouse's a little more closely related to them. We didn't copy them exactly, but it was just kind of like anything can happen in the Slumberland. So we kind of did that same thing and tried to work in common reoccurring nightmares that everybody has, like suddenly taking a test with our film teacher, Miss Boriskowski. So, yeah.
All right, Jim. So our second question, you kind of answered this just a minute ago, but let me go ahead and ask it anyway. Tim Partridge from the UK asks, what was the process in being the first to write an episode for Bushroot that is also the character's origin story? How developed was Bushroot in the show's Bible at the time you were writing?
Oh, so he didn't exist prior to the premise. So that was, So we were in basically at the very start for him. And when I listened to your guys' podcast, I was really pleased with how, you were hit it on the head where we were kind of struggling with how do we work in Darkwing earlier into the story and yet tell this major, it really is Bushroot's story for, basically the whole episode. But I kind of did steal the opening from a movie that we had studied down in film school called The Naked City, where it opens up with that famous line, like there's 4 million stories in the city of New York. And, I just played with it a little bit and I said, and Darkwing boastfully says, I know them all. Well, all the important ones anyway. So, it worked me in a little bit. And then it was nice a couple of months after that, since we hadn't met any of the other writers, except for Tad and Kevin Hobbs, our story editor. But I met Gary Sperling in the elevator one day, and he was saying how much he really enjoyed and I thought it was a unique structure to Beauty and the Beast. So it may have helped lead the series into where it started playing with narratives and stuff like that more. So maybe, I don't know. They were all super creative writers anyway as well. So I'm sure it was it was just a great show to work on.
All right, guys, that is Jim Peterson, co-writer, also wrote for Hot Spells. So
yeah,
he's responsible. He's partially responsible for a banned episode.
Yeah, although it wasn't my line. I don't know the one line where that probably got us in the most trouble was where Gosling said, "Oh, sorry, Dad, didn't mean to start." Originally it was the apocalypse, and Disney said, "Oh no, that's too religious." We said, "Okay, didn't mean to start Armageddon. Oh, that's even worse." Didn't mean to start the final battle between good and evil. Oh, okay, you can do that. But, oh well.
All right, guys, and that's Jim Peterson, and thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Will.
Yeah, thanks for participating in this 29th anniversary of Darkwing, this virtual panel, man.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm James Silvani. I am the artist for the Darkwing Duck comic book. I drew all of the issues for Boom Studios and Joe Books when they did it, except for the main story in the annual, which was done by the very talented Sabrina Alberghetti. It was a big, big honor to be the artist, to be considered a Disney Duck artist. I grew up, my first comics were the Carl Barks Uncle Scrooge comics and Donald Duck comics when I was a kid. They used to do these reprint issues and sell them in a pack of 5, which you can get at the dime store. And I would just tear through those and read them over and over again. And it's always been my dream that I would get to draw Disney ducks. And when I got the opportunity to work on Darkwing, it was a dream come true. It was a show that I loved. Most people say when it was growing up, but I was in college when Darkwing was on. And I thought this is fantastic. And I always had a special place in my heart for Darkwing because it was the first time Disney had kind of taken that Warner Brothers sensibility of doing cartoons, which they hadn't done before. It was just wacky. That's the only way to describe the show, was wacky. Wacky with heart. I mean, the father and daughter storyline with Gosselin was always a big draw, but it was just fun. It was just a pure fun cartoon, and I hope that we were able to convey that in the comic book. Yeah, it was definitely the most fun I've ever had on a job, on a comic book job. My first job was in comics, was working on the Animaniacs comics back when the show was on the air. And I thought, oh, this is fantastic. This is fun. I love the cartoon. And but Disney, of course, will always have my first loyalty and love. And when I got to work on something from that era, which was just as wacky and just as much fun in Darkwing, I was very thankful for that opportunity. And it'd be great to go back and do it again sometime, but love the chance I had to work on it when I did. So.
All right. And Jay, what has Darkwing meant to you the last 29 years?
Oh, God. A job. No, Darkwing is, I would say I was a casual fan when the show was actually originally on the air. I watched more DuckTales than anything else, but it was just ducks. Darkwing and DuckTales were the only Disney afternoon that really grabbed my attention. But once I got the job working on the comic, I went back and watched these all and discovered, God, what a great, it had a different level to it that I never saw before. Especially because the other comics I grew up with as a kid were a lot of Silver Age DC stuff. My brother was a big collector back in the 50s and 60s, and he passed all his comics down to me. And I saw what a great tribute that was to that Silver Age of comics. And that just, now that when I was older and I could understand that, that nuance to it, it made it a whole new, show for me. So I went back and watched every one of them again over and over. Of course, that was back, when there was just a very limited selection on DVD. And now that the whole series, except for a few select episodes, have been released on iTunes and you can watch them all on Disney Plus, I feel if I'm feeling jaunty, I'll go and fire them up, and I can watch 10 of those in a row and really enjoy it. And just leaves questions like, what else can we do in the comics? What else could we have done in the comics? And hopefully what we'll be able to do with comics in the future.
All right, James, now we have 2 questions from the fans. The first question is from Instagram, is from Art of Fan and Adventurer. She asks, what was it like working on the Darkwing Duck graphic novels, and how did you get hired to work on them?
So I had got my first job when I got back into comics after an extended break, working with Boom Studios on their Muppets comics. And they had an overall Disney license at the time. And I did Muppet King Arthur was the story. And they had lined me up for my next arc after that, which was going to be a Muppet Snow White, which is, they were doing fairy tale Muppet adaptations at the time. My editor on that book, Aaron Sparrow, asked if I could do a couple of covers for some of their other Disney comics. And he does say, you can do Incredibles, you can do Finding Nemo, you can do Mickey Mouse, and while you're at it, why don't you throw in a Darkwing Duck cover too? Because we're thinking of maybe doing a Darkwing cover. Okay, all right. So I went back and watched a couple of YouTube videos just to get the feel for it, and I did one of the covers, and then 2 days later he goes, okay, I got some good news and some bad news. Bad news is you're not going to be doing the Muppet Snow White comic anymore. All right. And he goes, good news is you're going to be doing the Darkwing Duck comic for our 4-issue miniseries. And first reaction was, I want to do Muppets. Then he showed me the script, and I was sold. It was an amazing script. He really did a fantastic job on it. And then after the first issue was finished and in the can, we found out that it was going to be an ongoing after that because the sales were so good from that first issue. That was my life for the next 2 years, and it was a fantastic ride the entire time. Then when we had the opportunity to go back and do some more, I threw everything else away that I was working on at the time and was ready to jump back into it because that job was a fantastic job.
All right. And the second question is from Facebook. Mike Hawkins asks, which Darkwing Duck character was the most difficult for you to draw?
Boy, that's a tough question. I'd say it was the toughest to draw, but also my favorite to draw was Negaduck, because, you got the same body type as Darkwing, but being a completely different character, whereas Darkwing has his chest out and being all heroic and, doing his best to impress. You take the same body type in Negaduck, and you have to bring that evil. You have to bring that bad guy, whether he's hunched over, whether he's threatening, whether he's, ready to drop a safe on your head. You got to convey that evil just all in the body language. And when you have such a similar character, because face it, Negaduck is the most evil Disney villain that there is. I mean, he's taken shotguns to bunnies. He's, back when you could do shotguns in TV shows and cartoons. There's Maleficent, there's Scar, there's Gaston, there's all these evil Disney characters out there, which are great villains. None of them hold a candle to Negaduck. And while he's the most fun to draw, it's all trying to take this heroic character and make him the worst one out there with their body language. And it is a challenge, but I welcome it every time I get to draw it.
Now, James, where can the fans find your work, and where can they find you? And is there anywhere where they can buy some of your artwork?
Yes. So you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Everything is Silvani Art. So my last name plus ART. I will be opening a store on my website. Hopefully that'll be up within the next 30 days. I'm just putting all the material for it together right now. I will have signed copies of the Darkwing trades. I will have original artwork. And if you would like to buy some of the pages from the Kurt Darkwing comic, my art dealer is Cadence Comic Art. And I don't know if we could put a link up or anything like that. But there is all the original inked pages from the comic in there that you can find, and as well as covers. And that's pretty much it.
Hi, my name is Aaron Sparrow. I am the writer of the Darkwing Duck comic book, and here to talk to Will about the comic and what it's like to work on Darkwing. Well, I started out as a huge. First of all, everybody, please forgive my appearance. We're still in lockdown in California, so I have not been able to go to the barber, and this is the result. So I apologize for those of you who tuned in when we're immediately like, who's this homeless person that that Will's interviewing? I started out with Darkwing as a fan, like so many of us did in the 90s. My brother and I used to come home and, we were excited to watch the show. We were big DuckTales fans and big superhero fans. And so when they announced Darkwing, we were particularly psyched and, couldn't wait to watch it. And it did not disappoint. I became a huge fan of the show, a huge fan of the character, all the voice actors involved, everybody who was involved with the show, were kind of like legendary in my mind, because they had produced this thing that I really, really loved. And so for years afterwards, I just always kind of had it in my head, like, man, that was such a great show. It would be fantastic if I ever got a chance, like in comics, because that was the field that I was trying to get into. It would be fantastic if I could find a way to, bring the character back. And I had this whole idea of how I would do it. And I already knew that I wanted to call it the Duck Knight Returns. All these things were kind of like already there. And then just through pure happenstance, I ended up working at Boom Studios, because I had previously worked at Tokyo Pop, which is a company that brought manga over from Japan, then translated it and released it for American audiences. And one of the editors there, Mark Panicia, who works at Marvel now, I believe he's in charge of the Star Wars line at Marvel right now, he recommended me. And so I got a job there, and they told me, like, well, what we want you to do is we want you to run this. We just got the Disney license. We want you to run those books. And my first question was, well, wait, you have the Disney license? Like, what do you have? And they kind of like, oh, we've got this and we've got that. It was kind of, standards and Pixar and the Muppets. And they were explaining like what they had. And I was like, can we do Darkwing Duck? And their question to me was, what is that? And so I told them, I said, Darkwing was a show that was on in the 90s. I was kind of like surprised that you guys have this license. You don't know anything about the license that you've just purchased. It's like, you're just like zeroed in on like Mickey and things like that. But there's like so much more that are part of this that you guys have. And so I started telling them about the show and how I thought it was just a slam dunk because, you had Disney ducks, so that's going to appeal to the duck crowd. You had superheroes, which is going to appeal to the comics crowd, and I said, plus now, this show was on in the 90s. A lot of the people that watch as kids now have children of their own and, want to share the things that they loved with the kids. So, this would be a really interesting book to do. I think it's time. It's the right time to do it. The fans are hungry for it. And at the time I was told, it sounds like a nostalgia play. We don't think it'll really work. So I spent the next 6 months trying to convince them that they needed to do it. And Disney was on board immediately. Like our friends at Disney Publishing were immediately like, yes, do a Darkwing book. We would love convincing Boom's management that it was a good idea. And even like up until the first issue came out on the stands, I'm not sure that they really thought so. I kind of felt like we got that first limited series, because it was originally supposed to just be a 4-issue limited series. And I always kind of felt that was just maybe to shut me up. Like it would come out and it would be, it would be whatever. It wouldn't sell very well. They'd be able to justify, okay, well, your idea didn't work and now, we're going to move on. But the pre-orders for the first issue were higher than any of the books that they had put out thus far under the Disney banner. So the interest was there. And I remember when we went to, I believe it was Emerald City Comic Con was where we announced the book. I was sitting on the panel there and they were running through like the stuff on the studio side. Mark Waid was doing Irredeemable at the time. That was like the #1 book at Boom. So he was talking a little bit about that and, people were listening. And then some of the other, things they were you could kind of tell the crowd was kind of ambivalent about. When we got to the Disney portion of the presentation, we had designed this graphic to come up on the screen that just had the lightning, coming down like the Dark Knight Returns, but it said Boom gets dangerous. And that was the first graphic that came up on the screen. And when that came up, everybody in the audience like gasped. There was an audible gasp out of the audience. And people I saw people actually put their hands over their mouths. Like they dared not hope for, the idea had just come into their head of what we were going to announce, but they still weren't sure that they wanted to hope, because what if they were disappointed? And then we put up the graphic of Darkwing, on the bridge, and the place went crazy. And I was sitting there. I had my cell phone on the table in front of me, and my assistant editors immediately started texting me tweets, because as soon as we announced it, people started tweeting about it, and then we were off to the races. And it was such a great vindication of everything that I'd tried to put together. That it was just a really, really great feeling to be able to announce that and to have the fans respond and to be right.
So Aaron, what has Darkwing meant to you for the last 29 years?
It's one of my favorite cartoons of all time, maybe the favorite cartoon. I mean, I'm not somebody who usually like quantifies those sorts of things because I love different things for different reasons. And obviously, you know, I grew up at a time in the 80s and the 90s when we had such a wealth of new material and new cartoons and new ideas being thrown out there, you know, new toy lines. It was just a really interesting creative time. And so the characters always just meant a huge deal to me. I just always loved the show. I loved the character interactions. I loved the fact that he was a single dad who was trying to raise this rambunctious girl, you know, that he wasn't really prepared to deal with. And that he was a character that had so many flaws. You know, Darkwing's great. He is an effective superhero, but he kind of has to learn to get over himself and get over his own ego and get out of his own way in order to be effective. And all that just like really spoke to me. And I think that's why the character stuck with me so long. And then of course you have all of the amazing vocal performances. You know, it's just such a great cast. So many people who have been just absolutely huge in the industry, from, you know, Jim Cummings as Darkwing to Rob Paulson as Steelbeak to, you know, just, you know, Katie Leigh as Honker. You know, Katie's done so much stuff that people don't even realize. You know, she was Rolf on Muppet Babies. She was on the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, which is another cartoon that I absolutely love. So it's just really interesting when you end up meeting these people and they turn out to be just as great as you hoped that they would be. You know, a lot of people say don't meet your heroes because they'll disappoint you. And I have to say that has not been my experience with the Darkwing cast and the creators. They've just all been fantastic.
Yeah, I would co-sign that too. All right, so Aaron, we announced that you were going to participate in this virtual panel. We had asked the fans to ask you questions, and we had the 2 questions already. They were chosen. One was from Facebook and the other one's from Instagram. Question number 1 is from Cody Blythe. He asked, what was it like trying to get Darkwing back into the world of comics?
Oh my gosh. Well, Cody, I think I touched on that a little bit. It was really difficult. It was surprisingly difficult. You know, I knew I had the idea. I knew that it was a winner. I knew that the marketing that I had planned for it would work. Not out of any like kind of vanity, but just because I knew you just come into things and you know the fan, you know, when you know a property and you know the fan base, you kind of know what they'll respond to and what they want. And that was what we wanted to, you know, what I wanted to deliver when I started pitching the book. But it was an uphill battle. Like I said, Disney was very supportive, but Boom Studios was not. And I remember one time in particular, we'd been working on planning the book because it was kind of in the pipeline that maybe we'd get to do it. You know, we didn't know. And I remember the boss at Boom, you know, it had been like a 12-hour day. We were all working, you know, and we were there late and we're all exhausted and all tired. And I remember the boss coming out of the office, and right before he left, he said, oh, Aaron, I want to talk to you tomorrow about Darkwing. And I said, oh, okay. And he said, oh, don't get too excited. I might shotgun the whole thing, and walked out of the office. That was the way he chose to end the day when me and my staff, you know, my assistant editors and I had just put in like a 12-hour day, hellacious, trying to get things approved, trying to keep things on deadline, you know, working really hard. And then the last thing that you're told is that, oh, we might just shoot down everything that you're working towards. And it was really disheartening. So there were a lot of challenges to getting it done. And then even once we got it done, I got let go from Boom shortly, actually the day before the first issue hit the stands. We got the numbers in for the first issue's orders a few months before, because of the way Diamond works. You know, you get your order numbers and then you print to order. And they came in really high, and then it was like, okay, well, we're going to make this an ongoing series because the numbers are so high. So I took my staff to lunch and I laid out like the next year of plans for the book that I wanted to do. Like, okay, away from this story to this story. We're going to do this story with Steelbeak. We're going to do this story, we're going to have this villain Duck Thulu. And that came about just because when the numbers came in for Darkwing #1, we were looking at kind of the banners in the office of other titles that Boom did. And we were saying, like, we're going to put Darkwing in everything. We're going to put Darkwing in Irredeemable. We're going to put Darkwing in this. And they had a big banner for Cthulhu Tales, which was the title they did. And I said, we're going to change Cthulhu Tales to Duck Thulu Tales. And that's kind of where the idea for that character came from, was just, you know, a joke in the office. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was tough to keep, you know, kind of your morale up when you kept getting shot down. So when they let me go, I actually ended up coming back and saying, well, now that I'm no longer listed as, you know, I'm not going to be listed as editor on the book, which was the reason that I was told that my writing contributions couldn't be credited, which, you know, I don't think was accurate, but that's just the way that they wanted to play it. I said, well, now I'd like, my writing contributions to be recognized. And, the fact that these stories, I think that, I want to be credited on the book. I wasn't asking for money. I just said I want, the due credit for my contribution. And that's when things like really turned sour with Boom. They did not want any kind of, publicity for me or, my involvement. They wanted to prop up, the people that they wanted in charge of it. And, you kind of quickly saw where that led, because although James and I ghost wrote the plots for those stories, all of our dialogue was getting rewritten when the scripts were turned in. So, a lot of the characters weren't in character anymore. There was a lot of things that people thought didn't really feel right. So thankfully, later when Joe Books decided they wanted to pick up the license, Disney remembered who was responsible and said, well, we want you can reprint this, but we want you to use the scripts from Sparrow and Silvani that they put together when they were working on the book. And so they reached out to us. We gave them those scripts and did like a lot of like rework and things like that, like just things that, since you were getting a chance to kind of do a special edition, that I could kind of tweak and make better jokes that, we could maybe sell a little bit better, that didn't work well enough the first time just because of the time constraints and things, a real chance to polish the work. And I'll always be grateful for that, because the Definitively Dangerous edition came out. Fans really responded to it. They really loved it. They really saw like what James and my intent for the material was, and it got us 8 issues of a new series. So, that was kind of like the rough road to getting it done to all the way through completion. So I hope that answered your question, Coach.
All right, and question number 2 is from Instagram. It's from Bishop Ransom 706, and they ask, "Is there anything you really wish you could have done that you weren't able to do?"
Yeah. Actually, there's a lot of things. Number 1 would be finishing our story. We did get cut off at issue 8 of the Joe Books series. Joe Books for all of their enthusiasm and the hard work that the people involved put in. They were a very small company, and Disney's a very large license. So I don't think that they had the bandwidth to really make the line as effective and as successful as it should have been. So we did get cut off at issue 8. We wanted to go through, we wanted to like we were building a whole story with Negaduck and what his plans were for Goslin, why he suddenly had some interest in her, and there were a lot of interesting reveals there. We still needed to bring back Morgana, which was one thing in the original Boom series that was done. They kind of fridged Morgana, and that was not James and my decision. We tried to do the best that we could with it, but it was just one of those situations where we didn't have full control of the scripts. So we just kind of had to roll with what we were given. So we never got to bring Morgana back, which is a huge bummer. Really would have liked to have done that. We had new villains to introduce. We had a huge new storyline. We were going to introduce new Justice Ducks. We wanted to do a storyline in space called St. Canardians of the Galaxy, which might have crossed over with Mighty Ducks if we'd gotten permission to do that. We wanted to have Mickey Mouse appear in the book at one point, and we wanted to do a new DuckTales crossover. The one that we intended from the beginning with the Phantom Blot and the ink, and just crossing over those 2 universes. Yeah, just so many different things, so many different stories I could tell you of like stuff that we had planned, and so many new villains that you guys would have got that we're hopeful that we may get another opportunity and may get to bring those to you. So yeah.
All right. So before you sign off, Aaron, do you want to plug yourself and where the fans can find you at, or any websites you got coming up, or where they can find your merchandise and stuff like that?
I don't have anything. I don't have anything to sell anybody right now. But if you want to talk to me, or you have other questions or things like that, you can find me on Twitter, just at Aaron Sparrow. I'm on Instagram, the same, Aaron Sparrow. Come find me. Come hang out and chat. Love talking to you guys.
Hi, my name is Tiffany, and I've been a super Darkwing Duck fan ever since the beginning. I was the same age as Goslin when the show came out, and I saw them all when they originally aired, and I recorded all of them, including the infamous Hot Spells episode, which I still have on tape. I'm also a collector, and happy to say that I have every piece of original Darkwing merchandise from the 90s except for 2 things: the Tiger handheld electronic game and the Comforter. I would like to share this, one of my original Tad Stones pieces of art, with my favorite Darkwing villain, the Liquidator. Also, I do a lot of Darkwing fan art on my Instagram page.
Hey guys, it's Owen. Although I didn't watch Darkwing Duck in the original run in the 90s, I watched it through Toon Disney and the DVDs in the early 2000s. One thing I always admired about Darkwing Duck was his determination and his can-do attitude towards anything he faced. So, with all that said, happy 29th anniversary, Darkwing Duck.
Well, hi everyone. It's Susan Silo. I'm so grateful for all of you Darkwing Duck fans. We loved doing the show. It was just absolutely incredible. Will had sent me a video of a rehearsal of Darkwing, one of the best shows I thought we ever did, because we had the world on the show. We had Dan Castellaneta, who I did Fievel's American Tales with, and some other shows, and he is adorable. I hadn't seen, and I loved seeing Hamilton Camp, who was a camp. He was just an amazing actor and the funniest guy in the room. I mean, Dan and everybody, including, they're really funny guys, but Hamilton, may he rest in peace. And I loved him. It was great seeing him. He was alive again to me. It was just fabulous. And then Kat Susi, fabulously talented gal. Who has done so much in animation, as you know, and I've worked with her on many, many, many shows. We did, I think we also did, let me see, it was James Bond Jr. and a bunch of other shows with Ginny McSwain. Speaking of Darkwing Duck, our venerable, marvelous director, who, not a particular episode, I remember she was having a little trouble with the word plethora, and we finally got that right. So I'm glad we did, because, and I was usually a sesquipedalian, which means a wordophile person. And I was always, hey, Susan, how do you pronounce whatever, And of course, Jim Cummings, who is also Chef Pischetti to my Nettie Pischetti. I'm his wife on Curious George. So we go back and back and back even before that. But God bless, what an amazingly talented man. And then, and also Ginny and I, the last show we did together shows you 29 years later, we did Rocketeer. And Rocketeer is a fabulous show. I don't think we're picked up, but hey, we're still there, man. You've got us on the screen forever. I'm trying to think of, and then Danny Mann, who has done a lot of work. I haven't seen Danny in a while, but maybe we'll meet again on another show. Another funny guy in the room. We've done, and Jack Angel, bless his heart. Jack Angel, absolutely fabulous. We had an amazing cast, and as you saw us, we were all in the room together, everyone. We were playing off of each other, and that's what I remember was the most fun, to be able to be connected to our actors, each one, and the schmooze. That was so darned important. Dan Castellaneta and I, when we were doing Fievel's American Tales, we were working with Dom DeLuise. You want to talk the funny guy in the room, man. I mean, he opened his mouth and that was it. We couldn't record. It was just incredible. But that's what I miss. And I hope that somehow with this virtual that we're doing, that we can get that feeling of everybody being in the room together, because ensemble work, I think that's what made Darkwing so amazing. Those characters, by the way, were very real to us. And I did want to say something. We were way ahead of our time about pollution. I mean, look at Neptunia. I mean, she said, don't put garbage into the sea. The sea is, Is that now or what? I mean, it was amazing if you think about things like that. I also played Toxie's mom on the Toxic Crusaders. That was a whole other show, which she was kind of a rough gal. But that was like, don't have toxic things in the air. Don't have toxic things in the sea. Don't be a toxic duck. You know, I mean, it's like, it's really incredible when you think how important those shows were for, you know, young people who were watching this, and they probably picked up on that. Little did they know they were having a good time watching Darkwing, but at the same time, they were getting a good lesson. And the lesson holds today, now more than ever. Darkwing Duck is phenomenal as far as being timeless. It's absolutely timeless. And I think that all of us really gave it our all and projected what we could, because we believed, like Darkwing, you know, we believed, you know, in the good. And even our not so good characters were kind of cute and fun. They weren't too scary. They were, you know, they were likable. You know, you went, I don't know, you know, he's kind of a mean guy, but I don't know, there's something sparkly about him. And Darkwing had a great sense of humor. That's another thing, humor. There was so much fun for all of us, and we brought that humor, I think, to make Darkwing alive. And Darkwing is real. Darkwing is real to us. That's what we performers like to think. We embody those characters, because it's not about doing a funny voice, people out there. It's about the character who comes first, and then the voice follows. It's good acting, and that's what Darkwing represented. And I'm very, very proud. And thank you, Will, for having me on the St. Canard Files, because it's really, it does our hearts good. I know all the performers concerned, all the wonderful performers that I mentioned, are very grateful that you keep us alive.
All right, Susan, we have two questions from the fans. We got one from Facebook, and it's from Sarah Nanaka. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name. She asks, if your character in Darkwing Duck was considered to appear in the new DuckTales reboot, would you agree to reprise your role?
Absolutely. There'd be no way that I would say no, not to be Neptunia again. I love Neptunia, and I'd like to broaden her. I'd like to do more. Let's see how we can take her further along. Absolutely. She lives in my heart, and I'm glad in yours too.
All right. The next question is from Instagram. It's from Lack Grizzly. He asks, who was your favorite character that you portrayed on live action, and who was your favorite character for voice acting?
Ooh, good question. Well, I usually say for animation, I liked Dr. Carbuncle. I thought it was really, really interesting. I did, because that came from I have no idea where. And it was an exciting show, Biker Mice from Mars, that we did. And oh my God, everybody in the world was in that show too. We even had Tori Spelling in that one. Yeah, we had 90210 because of Ian Ziering. Ian Ziering was one of the Biker Mice. But yeah, that in animation, I think was because it was the weirdest. It was the weirdest. Now in live action, well, you know, there are so many live action shows that I did in the 60s, the 70s, and going into the 80s, but I guess that's really hard. I loved Bonanza. I thought that it was a beautifully shot show, and the producer said to me, I'm going to dress you like a little doll. And he did. I had costume changes and I love that. You know, an actress loves that. You know, make me beautiful on screen. And then I did love The Love Boat, and probably the only one who smoked on The Love Boat, because I turned to Jamie Farr in French and I say, Avez-vous du feu? Which means, do you have a light? So there you go. Love Boat. Good.
All right, guys, that's Susan Silo for our 29-year anniversary of Darkwing Duck for the virtual panel. Hope you guys enjoyed her.
Ooh, I guarantee it's exciting to be on the Darkwing Duck panel here. Yeah, of course I love Jambalaya Jake, and I have a few recollections and things that I especially remember, and one was just the creation of the character in the beginning. I mean, I didn't create it. He was, created by the writers and written that way, but sort of forming how he would sound and act and everything was really cool. And I'm grateful that that they had me do it. I had worked on a few other Disney cartoons up until that point, Winnie the Pooh, Tailspin, etc. But when this came along, I do remember, and I had a pretty good ear for dialects and accents, so it was like, okay, the whole Cajun thing, and it is a little bit of a caricature, but that's okay because that's the kind of character he is. But I think it worked. But I remember at the time there were like a series of commercials for like a Cajun potato chip, like Leigh's Cajun chips. And it was this guy who was a real like Cajun chef, apparently. And his whole thing was, at the end of the commercial, he'd always say something like, "Ooh, you gonna like this chip, I guarantee." So, and I don't remember if that whole "ooh, I guarantee" was actually written, or I tend to think that was something that I just sort of brought out and suggested, that it might be fun to have Jambalaya Jake say that here and there. But so that was sort of a helpful model for me at the time, just because I knew this guy from these commercials. And then, looking into, exactly how that kind of an accent would work. And the fun thing about Jambalaya Jake, and this is kind of weird and interesting, of course, he's short in stature. One of the other characters that I did on for Disney on Tailspin, Colonel Spigot, was also the butt of many short jokes. So I don't know, these short villains were that was like a specialty for a while for some reason. But he was great because he was all over the place, and he was, he wanted to do some wrestling, and, and him and Gumbo are always going back and forth at it. And he's just the sheer roller coaster of his emotions and his evil glee and all that was really fun, to be able to do as a voice actor with his woo wee, it's great. It's great. You just get to chew the scenery a little bit and have fun. Many, years after the show had ended, and I was, living in LA, and I was doing theater. I was doing a lot of plays for a while, and one of the ones that I was in, there was this gal who was in it, we were in it together, and we had just kind of met, really, just maybe, a couple of days earlier, and we were talking, and me just talking in my regular voice like this. And she said, "Hey, were you on Darkwing Duck?" I said, "Yeah." "Were you Jake, Jambalaya Jake? Was that you?" I go, "Yeah, how did you know that?" I mean, I wasn't that totally blew my mind, that somebody would recognize that character from just my regular speaking voice. But, it's not like I go around and people say, "Hey, you're Jambalaya Jake, aren't you?" very often. He was in 2 episodes, so it's not like he's, it's great. Hey, 1 episode is great. But I was flabbergasted that somebody actually knew it and recognized the character from my speaking voice. But yeah, you know, it was just so much fun to do him. And, you know, of course, Jim Cummings was Gumbo, along with, of course, Darkwing Duck and many others. And, you know, I think I did most of both of them. Both of those recording sessions were done with just me. Nobody else was there except the writers and the director and everything, it's always kind of a bummer when everybody's not there. It used to be like my first cartoon series, which was, you know, I was really grateful and happy about and excited about, was Winnie the Pooh. And mostly the people were there, you know, 4 or 5 of us were always there. And you're interacting while you're recording, which is really cool. The ones that weren't there were Piglet, because he was in New York, and Tigger at first. Anyway, because Piglet was, what's his name? John Fiedler.
And that's just the way he always talked normally. You didn't have to do anything to his voice.
And Paul Winchell was Tigger originally, and he just, for whatever reasons, he just kind of did his own thing. I think I got to work with him in person once or twice when it involved singing, because we had to kind of have the music and do the singing together at that point. Otherwise, he would just do it all on his own. And then, you know, when he passed away, Jim Cummings took over Tigger. So my roundabout point is, it was fun to do it with, you know, the characters all in the room at the same time. And even with Tailspin, I did all of those by myself, because originally there had been a different voice for Colonel Spigot. And they made like 2 or 3 episodes when they decided that they just didn't like the way the direction it was going. So they recast it. And by that point, they already had the animation for a lot of the episodes. So I did a lot of those matching the picture that was already there. Not all of them. Some of them weren't, you know, finished yet. But yeah, with Darkwing Duck, I believe that it was just, you know, both of those episodes. I think I'm right that I wasn't in the room with Jim Cummings and the others, but I don't know. Maybe my memory's failing. I did get to work with Jim a lot on Disney stuff. Yeah, and Terry McGovern, Launchpad. I believe he was up in San Francisco, so he wasn't there either. But it's all good, you know. Anytime you get to do anything, it's fun. And you have the other people, the writers, and the director, Ginny McSwain, I believe, the voice director. Yeah, and I'm not even sure if after the first Jambalaya Jake episode, which was Can't Buy You Love, right? I'm not even sure they had a second one planned yet. I think later they decided, hey, let's bring Jambalaya Jake back. So they had the second episode, which was cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of going on and on here. But it's obviously a really cool memory for me. And hey, you know, who knows? He's just deep in the bayou somewhere. He's not dead. So he can be revived. He can be brought back to life. So I'm up for that anytime.
Now, Michael, you have 2 questions from Instagram. The first question is from J. Anthony 81, and they ask, where did you come up with the inspiration or the voice for Colonel Spigot on Tailspin?
Well, yeah, interesting. As I mentioned, I think there were like 2 episodes that had already been completed with the voices and the animation and everything. And they just didn't, for whatever reasons, I think maybe it sounded a little too like Nazi-like or something. So I remember they brought me in, and again, it was Ginny McSwain was the director at the audition. I mean, I was sort of known a little bit with the Disney folks for having been doing Winnie the Pooh, and so it was just basically looking at the character and trying to find a voice that was totally different from the one that they had, but they wanted to get away from, and just looking at him and kind of playing around with the way he might have sounded. So it just evolved into him having this, you know, a little bit of a speech impediment, or you know, like a sloppy lisp, I guess you'd call it. And the fact that he's amped up again because he's short, and you know, he's got to exert his authority even more so to overcome for his lack of stature. So, you know, and the fact that he's always having to, you know, when he introduces himself, he always has to make sure, you know, I am Colonel Spigot. I'm trying not to spit. Perhaps you've heard of me. He's a little insecure, you've heard of me, right? So it just sort of evolved, but it had to sort of sound like a short, kind of wound up, a little bit angry, but also kind of, full of himself way. So,
all right.
I don't know. It's hard to explain these things sometimes, but there was some kind of thought behind it. Okay, he's got just somehow you look at something and you try to come up with something that matches whatever you're looking at.
All right. And the last question is from Instagram, also is from Nia85, and she asks, who is your favorite character that you voiced on an animated cartoon, and who is your favorite character that you voiced on a video game?
Well, that's like, who's your favorite child? If they're standing there, you can't really answer. Or you can't even answer even if they're not there. It's hard to say what my favorite is for anything, because I'm just, anything that I've gotten to do or that I get to do, I'm always like grateful and excited, because, it's nice to get to do this kind of thing. I certainly have a definite spot in my heart for Gopher from Winnie the Pooh, because that was kind of my first really, I would say big job that ended up being something that was ongoing. So I don't know if it's my favorite, but it was my first, I'll put it that way. And all the Disney stuff, it's just even the thought of, gee, I got get to work for Disney is really cool. And there have been other cartoon characters that were really nice. Zorro was one. Gosh, it's hard to answer that. Video games. There are 2 characters that really come up, first when I'm talking video games. One of them is from Diablo. That's the character of Deckard Cain. Only because it's been like kind of a long time thing, even though I know they killed him off. But he in the world of Diablo, just because you're dead doesn't mean you can't like reappear somehow. So Deckard Cain is certainly, you know, a fond character, and also the Carmine brothers from Gears of War, which really started out the first Gears of War. Anthony Carmine, they're going alphabetically. There's Anthony, Benjamin, and Clayton so far. Literally, he didn't even have a name at first in the first Gears of War when I did the recording. And, you know, I think he was just called Cog Soldier 1 or something like that. But they eventually gave him a name and an identity, and before, you know, the game came out. And, I mean, he had a personality. He was kind of young and enthusiastic, but there wasn't a whole lot that you got to do with him before he got his head blown off and he was killed. So, but for some reason, there was something about him that you know, some fans kind of grabbed onto, enough so that he was popular enough that they had to bring back Carmine in Gears of War 2, except now it's his brother, Benjamin Carmine. And they sort of sounded similar. I think Benjamin was even the more, you know, the most kind of, you know, gee whiz, gung ho, you know, Sergeant Private Ben Carmine reporting for duty, sir. Then he gets killed. Then they have a third brother, Clayton, who's really the bigger, you know, he's the badassest of the three. And they even had a whole fan vote, which was part of a charity, you know, raising funds for charity. Should Carmine live or should Carmine die for Gears of War 3? And you know, there were T-shirts. Carmine must live, or say, you know, Carmine must die. Save Carmine. So it became this whole really cool thing. So Clayton Carmine is still around. So again, my kind of long-winded answer to the video game things, and you know, been lucky enough to work on a lot of different video games, and they're all really kind of different and cool. And it's always hard to say, but those two, Deckard Cain and the Carmines, definitely come to my mind first. So that's kind of my long non-answer to your question. Okay, so thank you, everybody out there in Darkwing Duck Land. Stay well, stay safe, and I guarantee this too shall pass. All right, thank you.
Can we go home yet? But we haven't run out of dinosaur prints. Oh, come on, Honk. Dinosaurs are extinct. I know. I mean, they don't exist. I know. So, what are they? Dinosaur prints. Well, I'm Honker Muddlefoot, student of science.
Hi, this is Katie Leigh, and I played Honker Muddlefoot on Darkwing Duck. And the last 29 years, what it has meant to me is a lot. Actually, it means more to me now than it did when I did. Okay, let's see. When it started, I was pretty darn excited. It was a new thing for Disney Channel, and we made a lot of episodes, so that was exciting. I got to work with a great cast, and that was exciting. And then a lot of years in between kind of rolled around and not much. And now that I get to meet fans and watch episodes I didn't see before on Disney Plus, and I realize what an amazing show it was, how good the writing is, and the relationships, how well fleshed out they are. I am so proud and so thankful to have been a part of the Darkwing Duck series.
All right, Katie, we have 2 questions for you. One is from Facebook, and it's from Instagram. It's from Leigh711, and she asked, "What was it like working with Christine Cavanaugh and Dana Hill?"
Awesome. First of all, anytime I get to work with other women, I'm always excited because usually I can't tell you how many times I'm the only woman in the cast. So to work with them was amazing. Their energy and their style is very different from mine, so we worked really well together. Dana was a sweetheart. I just loved her. She was always fun, very enthusiastic. And Christine too, but she always had that kind of offbeat way of delivering her lines that were just absolutely delightful and surprising. Yeah, and they were both great people.
Okay, the second question is from Facebook, is from Elizabeth. She asks, how does it feel knowing so many people look up to Honker as a character who is strong despite the difficulty he faces?
Well, first of all, I didn't know that. So now that you're telling me, it feels wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know.
Oh yeah, Honker.
Tell me more, Elizabeth.
Yeah, Honker comes strong. It takes like about 20, 30 episodes, within the air date order, but he kicks in. He's a very strong character.
Yeah, I mean, at first he's just kind of nerdy, and like with most shows, I mean, luckily we had enough episodes to sort of develop his character. Sometimes you don't get that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thanks, Katie. But before you go, can you do the Honker voice for us one time?
Sure, you're listening to the St. Canard Files, and I highly recommend it.
It's playtime! Hey guys, good to see everybody. We are ready to hear me talk about Quacker Jack and how and when it happened. Well, let's see. I got the call and I appeared at the studio, and Ginny McSwain was the director, the lovely Ginny McSwain. And I saw all my peeps, Dan Castellaneta and Michael Gough, and a whole bunch of good folks on either side of me. And we got the script and went through it. And at which point, I noticed I'm playing Quacker Jack. I mean, this is just they give you the role. They say here, nobody says, would you read for this first, or you read for that? Let's see what you've got, etc. They just know what you can do. At least Ginny knew what it is we could do, so she gave it to us. And I looked at Quacker Jack and I thought, well, I'm going to draw upon an actor that has a quality, some sort of comic, or some actor that has some sort of interesting quality to their voice. And I picked Kirk Douglas originally, who has kind of a cracking sound. Everything he did was in this area over here. And I thought, I'll do that. That'd be fun. Because I've done Jack Palance before and Rod Steiger. I thought, no, this is Kirk Douglas. But what happened was Dan's character, Megavolt, I believe it was before me in terms of appearing. And nobody knew what we were going to do because we didn't rehearse it. And then as we rehearsed it, Dan chose his character to sound like Kirk Douglas. And as soon as I heard him do that, I said, oh my God, what am I going to do? I had that in my head. Now I got to get him out and come up with something else, which I did. A little bit crazy, a little bit kind of comedy, high pitch, nervous reaction, etc., frantic, OCD, whatever I could do to get the character going so it really sounded like he was off the wall, because he's off the wall. And it worked. Normally, what happens is the director will say, give me a deeper voice. I hear the character as a deeper voice. Could you try that? Well, asking me for a deeper voice is asking me to swim underwater for 23 minutes because I don't have that. So Ginny knows, keep him over there, over here, wherever, find your level, and you got it. And that's what I did. And that's how Quacker Jack was born.
So, Michael, what has Quacker Jack meant to you, or Darkwing meant to you, the last 29 years?
Well, nobody figured, like all the series I've done, you don't figure they're going to last that long. It's kind of like a one night stand, which I've never had. Is my wife in the room? No. It's you just think that's it. It's a job. I'm gonna do this job, and I move on from there. It'll run for a season or 2 seasons, and that'll be it. 29 years. I mean, that's a marriage, and it's lasted more than most marriages here in Hollywood. So I consider myself very lucky. When I go to conventions, I get all these great fans, and amidst all the characters that I have laid out, a lot of them pinpoint and say, "Oh my God, I love him. I love this guy. Sign my picture, whatever." And I wind up doing that. And of course, with Banana Brain, clutching Banana Brain, it's just been a lark. It's been great fun. It's been a character I thought I put to bed, and he keeps waking up.
All right, Mike, we had 3 questions for you. One of them is from Instagram. It's from JDowns80, and he asked, did you have a hard time transitioning from Quackerjack to Mr. Banana Brain?
Actually, no. I didn't have a hard time transitioning from Banana Brain to Quackerjack and back and forth because I'm schizophrenic. So my wife says that she never knows who I'm going to be the next day, so that was pretty easy. And it's just vocal. It's just a vocal choice. I mean, if it was something on camera, I may have a different thing I'd be talking to you about. But the fact that it's a vocal choice, a different level, a different kind of attitude, no, there wasn't too much of a problem. An actor. I teach voice animation. I've been doing that since the '80s, and in fact, I'm at michaelbellvoices.com. I teach a class. It doesn't cost anything. If anybody's interested in doing voices, they just go to Michael Bell Voice Acting Seminar, Michael Bell VO Seminar, whatever it is. I've been so long, so animation seminar on YouTube. And you get an hour of me showing you how to create a character. That should have answered a lot of questions for fans.
All right. Question number 2 is from Facebook. It's from Charlie Robinson. And he asked, with Quackerjack and Megavolt having so many episodes together, was it easy to build chemistry with Dan Castellaneta?
Chemistry is an interesting word. I don't know if you needed chemistry. I don't recall all the scripts, obviously. If I did, I'd be crazy. There's not as if we had a repartee between us. It's not as if it's a narrative where there's this dramatic unfolding or comedic back and forth, because everything is spliced anyway in the editing room. So no matter what we do, it's going to sound really good as long as we're 2 professionals. And that goes for everybody in that list. Everybody's sitting there working. Unlike Rugrats, where I have a real character and relationship, it's important. The chemistry is important. But for a show like this, which is off the wall, almost sketch, wacky sketch, chemistry is the wrong word. Just the professionalism that exists between 2 actors. And as I said, we don't have a lot of dialogue, I don't recall, between us. If we do, I don't recall it. But we do our job, and they splice it together. So if there wasn't any chemistry, they would create it. And Dan's a very talented guy, so it's great working with talent. Because when you're working, it's really interesting. You think in your head sometimes, is that how I would say his line? And you can't do that when you're working at that kind of a pace. So he's so assured, and as was everybody in that room. I got to say that we were fortunate, really fortunate.
All right, and the last question is from Facebook. Haley Strock asks, "Can you do the voice one last time?"
Okay, let me work it out. Hang on a second. Don't move.
Oh wow.
It's playtime! How's that?
Hey, hi there, everybody. And my name is Terry McGovern. I am the voice of Launchpad McQuack for Darkwing Duck. Well, for DuckTales originally, then Darkwing Duck. And one of the coolest things that ever happened to me in my life, I had a lot of blessings. I've had a lot of blessings. My kids, my wonderful marriage to my wife, just so many things in my life that worked out okay. And a big okay was getting hired by Tad Stone at Disney to be the voice of this bumbling giant orange-haired duck. Oh, that's him behind me. Where are you? There he is over there. How you doing? And it was just a fantastic experience. And the voices that we had, the other voices, Russi Taylor, who we lost last year, sadly, Peter Cullen, Frank Welker, the incredible Frank Welker. So many wonderful voice actors that I got to be a part of. And every week I drove over to Burbank and parked in the Disney parking lot. And if you've ever been there, the Seven Dwarves kind of hold up the building. It's a crazy place. I love it. And into the recording studio with Ginny McSwain. And we also had Andrea Romano as a director. Just great people, the top of the line, as you would imagine, at Disney. And I got to recreate my role as the big bumbling orange-headed duck pilot who, what was one of his lines? I never met a crash I didn't cause or didn't like, something like that.
If I could fly it, I could crash it.
Oh, if it can fly, I can crash it. Thank you very much. So anyway, here we are 29 years later. Ah, boy, wow. And I would have been done with it 29 years ago after we were finished, except a year ago, I got a call from a wonderful young man named Neri Lemus, who runs an agency, a talent agency called Celebworks. And his people are all voice actors. And he takes them around to Comic-Cons all over the country. And so I did my first one in February of last year at Pensacola, Pensacon, and I fell in love with it. I said, this is unbelievable. You know, they fly you into the city, they put you up in a hotel, and then you go down to the convention and you meet all the wonderful fans and sign things. It's great. And I cannot wait till we get back to that. I have to wait, but you know the expression, I can't wait. So I was asked to say how it would change my life significantly, because when you do something for Disney, especially a really big show like DuckTales and Darkwing Duck, millions of people see it. And years, first of all, with my own kids, as they were growing up, and both shows had become a hit already, they were bringing friends into the house. That's my dad, he's Launchpad. Say something, Dad. And I would say, all right. And I thought, well, maybe I should charge them. No, I'll just do it. Hey, how are you? Nice to see you. And the guest would be wide-eyed with amazement. But my son, who had asked me to do that, he was blasé. He said, okay, now you've met him. That's the end of that. So I would do the voice for the kid, you know, I'd say, hey, how are you? Nice to see you. And he would kind of be blown away because in many cases they had said to my son, you're nuts. That's not so. And then they hear that it's true. But my son would never pretend like he was impressed. He just had a father with this weird thing he does. And but they were very, very, I won't use the word captivated. That doesn't sound like a boy's word, but they were pretty pleased that their old man did the voice of a duck. You know, that made them very happy. And it made me happy too, because first of all, it paid well. The residuals were great. They've diminished somewhat over the years, as residuals always do. But so what? I mean, I had the time of my life, and I got paid 1,000 times over. And when the pandemic weather gets better, hopefully we will all be gathering together at conventions all over the country. And I hope I will see you there. In the meantime, please be safe. Stay at home. Just chill it for a while, okay? We got a ways to go. And turn on the TV, go to Disney Plus, and watch the original DuckTales and watch Darkwing Duck. And I have to say something before I forget. I was talking about the cast numero uno, my man, my friend, who I've gotten to know again with the Comic-Cons after all those years, Jim Cummings. Nobody like him. There really isn't anybody like him as a talent or as a human being. I just love the guy, and I'm so glad to be his sidekick. So happy 29th, Darkwing. Let's get dangerous.
All right, Terry, before I let you go, we got 2 questions we need you to answer from the fans. One of them's from Instagram. Her name is Rylu7458. Was voicing LP and Darkwing different compared to DuckTales?
No, I've been asked that before. I think the answer is no. I mean, the character was the same one. And yet I've had people say, well, I sense a slight difference. I think the only difference would be that in DuckTales, he was a little more simple. He was a little more innocent. In Darkwing Duck, it became not more serious, but there was an edge. Darkwing Duck was edgier than DuckTales. So everything else, the writing, the characters, the delivery of the characters did have a little bit of an edge to it. It was kind of high energy. But no, same vocal cords, same approach to doing it. So no.
Okay. The last question is from Facebook. It's from Mike Russo. What were the challenges in not recording with the full cast in the same room on Darkwing Duck?
How do people know these things? That's amazing. You guys are so well informed. Well, Mike, just to recap, I had done, I think, all of DuckTales. I don't remember whether it was between shows or after I already got into Darkwing. I think it was after I already started Darkwing. I had moved from Los Angeles to San Francisco right after Darkwing started. And then I couldn't fly down to Burbank every week. It was just not possible. I was starting a new life up north here. So what we did was what was called a phone patch. And I went to a recording studio in San Francisco, and I sat there by myself with an engineer on the other side of the glass. And he was recording me with the same microphone settings as they have in Burbank onto a tape. That's what that was, doing things that way. And then the tape was shipped out. Now, of course, we can do it live. We can do it on programs like Zoom. And I would have maybe seen my cast members, but in fact, I didn't get to back in those days. And that was a challenge but when you have a great director, a director says, okay, your energy should be here because this has just happened over there. And she gets you to where you're supposed to be. So it sounds like you're there. And it was wonderful. I mean, I was so glad I didn't get dropped from the show or something. They didn't write me out. They kept me in the show. And I got to finish Darkwing Duck. And here we are, man, 29 years later, celebrating, in my opinion, one of the best animated series in history. And I got to work with Jim Cummings. So it all worked out, Mike.
I want to say thank you to everybody involved with bringing Darkwing Duck to television. Darkwing helped me through a very rough time in my life, and that is why I continue to follow the self-proclaimed terror that flaps in the night. Anyway, thank you again, and stay dangerous, everybody.
Hey guys, it's Gadget from Gadget Vlogs, and happy anniversary, Darkwing. You've influenced my life in so many ways over the years by instilling the hope that no matter how many times you get knocked down, you can still rise above it with the ones that you love. Basically, just keep moving forward was your motto. Thank you again, Darkwing, and happy anniversary, and let's get dangerous.
Hello, my name is Jordan. I'm from Canada. I've been a fan of the Disney Afternoon since the mid-90s, and I've been collecting since around 2008, and I'm really looking forward to see how this panel turns out.
Just want to thank everyone that was involved with Darkwing Duck. It was a big childhood memory of mine, and now that it's on Disney Plus, I get to share it with my 2 youngest boys and share new memories with them. Here's to everyone. Cheers.
Okay, so I hope everyone enjoyed this 29th anniversary Darkwing Duck virtual panel. We did this for the 30th anniversary Disney Afternoon. We had 3 people who wanted to participate, but with scheduling conflict, we couldn't get them in time, so we apologize about that. I know they're sorry. You know, they tried. You know, I tried. We couldn't make it happen. But maybe next time we'll get them, guys. You know, we had 10 cast members, so I hope that was good enough. We had some fan-made submission videos, so we hope you guys enjoy that. Again, my name is Will Santana. Make sure y'all tune in and check out our podcast. It's called the St. Canard Files, a Darkwing Duck podcast. We are on multiple platforms if you want to check us out. We are on Apple iTunes, we're on Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon Echo, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, YouTube. We're on so many platforms, so make sure you check us out, give us a follow. We have exclusive interviews with cast members. We got exclusive interviews with Tad Stones and Susan Silo, the voice actors and so forth, Katie Leigh. So you guys just tune in. We're doing the episodes in the air date order. We hope you guys enjoyed this virtual panel. Make sure to follow us. Check out me and my co-host, Mike Russo. You guys remember, stay dangerous, and hopefully we'll see you guys at a convention near you one day.